This is going to be a different kind of video, but I thought I would answer a question from, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I don't think there's another way to say it. Wee. Can you do a video on what you liked and didn't like about BU, which is Boston University, the school I went to, slash college in general? We also asked, what would you have done differently? I'm gonna save the second half of that question for another video, just I think there's a lot more to talk about there. And I'm also gonna talk about college in general. I've got some well thought out notes here that I will talk through, since BU's pretty specific. So we. If you have any specific questions, hit me up. But I also, this is kind of already not off to a great start. I was looking for my diploma to prove that I went to college, but I have no idea where it is. So we can probably end the video there. So I finished recording the entire video and I went back and looked around a bit more because I was like, there's no way I just lost my diploma, right? And I found it in a closet, and it turns out I actually never opened it. So not only is this a Q&A, but you're also getting the added bonus of an unboxing. So we're gonna open this live together. We should call it College Graduate Unboxes Diploma 2 years after graduating, but here we go. Suspense is killing me. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Don't care. Jeez. Wow. There we go. My diploma from Boston University. And I guess this is the social proof that you need to know that I went to college and I'm officially qualified to talk about what I liked and disliked. Number 1, environment and energy. I'll be completely honest with you, as an adult, I say that in air quotes because I'm only 23, I graduated in 2021, so I'm still very much a kid just pretending to be an adult. But going back to college campus and now having been an adult for almost 2 years, the energy is just so different from when you are working, and you don't really realize that until you're kind of out of it, right? When you're so deep in it all the time, you kind of forget because it's just your norm. But oh my gosh, like the energy and environment that college offers is genuinely incredible. It's kind of like this giant science experiment when you put a bunch of 18 and 22-year-olds into this sort of condensed area and just let them go at it and see what happens. But that's also the beauty of it, because from 18 to 22 for most undergrads, I know that can vary up or down, it's a pretty pivotal chapter and period in your life. And there's just like this frenetic energy to explore and be curious and just live life, which I'm not trying to sound depressing, but that's just lost in a lot of people when you get to adulthood. If anyone wants to hear or talk about that, I'm also happy to do a video like this about adulthood. But the energy environment, oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely incredible. Love that about college. Coming from a strict Asian household, as if any of you have watched my other videos, you know that's what I was raised in. Coming to college and being away from home, wow, such a liberating feeling. And not to generalize, feel like that's the case for many 18-year-olds when they start college, is even if they didn't grow up in a demanding household or environment, just being away from home for the first time is such a different experience than if you just did like summer camp or, I don't know, lived with your extended family for a bit of time. Again, independence, the freedom to make decisions for yourself, to decide what classes you take, what food you want to eat, what kind of schedule or routine you have or choose not to have in college, the kind of activities you partake or focus in. And I think most of all, you just get to really have this sort of blank slate that you're able to kind of experiment with different parts of your identity or your personality that you may not have gotten the chance to when you were in school, because again, you have the influence of your parents, the community you grew up in, and having to deal with all of that really sort of stifles your ability to explore who you are and who you want to be. And I'm speaking from experience here as just an Asian American who grew up in a predominantly white area, and I feel like, even if you're not, you can probably relate in some cases. But you spend a lot of time trying and focusing on being who other people expect you to be. And the more you do that, the less time, the less room you make for yourself to actually decide for yourself who you are and who you want to be. Let me make sure I just cross these off. So, exploration. Before I say anything else, if you are in high school, maybe, or you're in college, please don't be that person who has their entire college career planned out. I remember when I was a freshman and I met some kid at orientation who already somehow knew all the classes he was taking through senior year to get his 140 whatever 150 credits to be a CPA, and I was like, what, dude? I don't even know what our campus looks like yet. How does this guy already know the rest of his college career down to the classes and credits? But I say all I have to say, the opportunity you have to just explore, I mean that very broadly, and I'll kind of talk more specifically, is one you don't get when you graduate, unfortunately. I feel like everything I'm probably saying is just adulthood sucks, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. There's a lot of great aspects to it, trust me. But yeah, no, just being in college, you had this opportunity to explore different parts of life that you might not get exposure to without really having to put in effort. You have, in most cases, prereq classes, which sometimes make no sense, why you have to take them, right? If you're studying to be a musician, why are you taking geometry? I don't know, shapes of instruments, I guess. In my case, the classes I genuinely loved the most in school were the ones that had absolutely nothing to do with my dry ass major. My freshman year and sophomore years, I took a couple religion classes, some computer science classes. I also took sociology, and then later in college when I studied abroad, I took architecture. And those classes were so fascinating to me, and not even interestingly enough, not surprisingly, I did well in those classes. I didn't mind doing the work because I was genuinely interested in the subjects, which we'll talk about this more when it comes to the cons or my dislikes of college. But apart from being able to explore different topics or subjects to see kind of what you like, what are you curious about, you also get to explore just different communities, right? You can explore different interests. If you are super into Quidditch or Naruto running down the hallway, go do that. There's probably a good chance that someone else at college is into that, especially if you grew up in an environment where you felt like you weren't able to show certain parts of yourself. Oh my gosh, being able to go to college and finally be like, wait, it's not like weird of me to like anime or to like playing like Dungeons and Dragons or whatever other weird stuff you're into. And that just ties into, again, just giving yourself that sort of weight off your shoulders to start understanding what you care about, what you genuinely like, and who you are and who you want to be. I forgot to mention this. In terms of exploration, you're also able to try things out without any sort of repercussions. Like, be a freshman and just join 10, 20 clubs that you're interested in, go to the meeting, go to the second, and if not, just stop going. Like, no one cares. And I feel like as, we get older, we sort of lose that, I guess, a desire to just like try things out. And additionally, I think part of it is just because we obviously have more responsibility. I say we as a full-grown adult. But yeah, it's like you can't just, I don't know, quit your job and be like, yeah, like I'm gonna go try out basket weaving and be totally okay. So use college, use the insulation from risk in the outside world that you have, and just follow your curiosity wherever it goes, no matter how wacky you think it is not. Be you. Oh my god, wait, that was not intended actually at all. Like BU Boston University, but yeah, ignore that. I saved the most important point for last. What I loved about college was genuinely the people. And at the end of the day, I say this because relationships are, bar none, I will die on this hill, the most important part of life. They will shape you into who you are. They will make you feel the most fulfilled in life more than any sort of degree, any sort of, I don't know, salary, whatever other shiny objects people care about as an adult. So when you're in college, just take full advantage. Really invest in your relationships, because there is no time like college when you have more time to do so. When you're in college, you're able to, I'll kind of break this into two different points. You're able to find like-minded people, as I've sort of talked about already, which this is one I particularly resonate with, because as I mentioned, I evidently am Asian American, and I grew up in a community, went to a school where my graduating class of over 300 people, when I did a project, and I think it said our, I guess, demographic was like 80 or 85% white, and everyone else was kind of mashed in the remainder. And growing up in that sort of environment played a huge role in me having, honestly, a distaste for this huge part of my identity, right? My cultural identity. And going to college, going to a school with such a broad spectrum of different kinds of people was so freeing for me. Being able to see other Asian Americans who were genuinely, as weird as it sounds, proud to be Asian was mind-blowing to me. And over time, just being around them helped me also develop that sense of pride in my identity, which I honestly can't thank them enough for. Seriously. And on top of that, you also get to meet an entirely diverse and different group of people. I was fortunate enough to, as I mentioned, go to BU, which I had no idea when I applied In fact, I committed to the school without having stepped on campus or knowing anything. This is a side story. I only applied to BU because I applied to BC, and when you type in Boston on the Common App, you get Boston College, Boston University. I didn't get into BC. Honestly, I'm so grateful that I didn't, because it would have been the same thing as high school, and it was higher ranked, and my parents probably would have made me go there. So, dodged a bullet on that one. But being able to go to a school with such a diverse, oh my gosh, like, population, I was able to sit in classes with people from like Singapore, people from India, people from Japan, people from like the Canary Islands, people like from Minnesota. Like, I met an Asian person from Minnesota, which I was like, there's no way that is possible. And when you get to just be around all these different kinds of people, you are able to, without, fully living through their lives, but just hearing their stories and their experiences, you start to develop this kind of broader perspective of the world. It's not just that small town you came from. There's so much more out there than you might have thought. And I might be speaking just personally, I don't know if everyone shares this sentiment, but how can you not love and appreciate people when you get to understand them more? So yeah, I absolutely loved the people aspect of college. On to what I disliked about college. Maybe it's what you've been waiting for, maybe not. But to start, bullshit classes. Oh my gosh. If you graduated college or you're in college, which, by the way, I'm genuinely curious, for those of you watching who are in school, please let me know. I want to be able to make videos that cater to you and are useful in some way, so it's just helpful to know. But oh my gosh, classes, so many of them are a waste of time. Like, they're meaningless. When I think about my curriculum, so I was in the undergrad business school. I honestly feel like 90% of the classes I took were absolutely useless. I'm on my second job, but I have not used them in real life. Adulthood. Like, honestly, the material that I have used in work, eventually I did take a class that taught me those subjects, but when I had to go through recruiting for an internship, I literally self-taught myself all that material for free, online, and in less time, without having to like sit through a boring lecture and do homework and take exams. So in that sense, it's just not a valuable use of your time or energy. But because you need to take these classes to get that, again, I wish I had my piece of paper to show you, but to get that piece of paper that says you're qualified to be an adult and get a job, it's so dumb to me. And this is another thing. I wasn't in STEM, evidently, but I had friends and people I knew who were pre-med and whatnot, and weed out classes like bio, physics, all that, biochem. Like, why are these classes just unnecessarily hard just to, like, see who wants it bad enough? That is so stupid to me. Like, oh my gosh, like, all you're doing by making these classes difficult and just encouraging this sort of just unhealthy, like, study habit from the beginning of school is just so bizarre to me. Like, as if going from high school to college for many people isn't a challenging and stressful enough time in their lives. On top of that, you're adding the unnecessary burden of having to get like, I don't know, a B minus, which on the curve equates to like a 50%. Like, what? It just stifles any desire to want to learn and to be curious. And it's like, isn't that the very purpose people go to college, is to learn and be curious and see like what they like and don't like? So if you just snuff that out from the beginning, who are you really helping apart from like your own, I don't know, ego or whatever as the department and whatnot? So yeah, BS classes absolutely suck. Another piece of college I did not like, honestly, I think it's just so, one of the worst parts is college teaches you what to think and not how to think. And there's a very clear difference between the two. It's sort of like an education versus knowledge. Because it's one thing to just put a textbook in front of somebody and say, hey, go remember this exact clause or this exact line in the chapter so you can circle the right bubble on this multiple choice test just so we know that you read it. Like, what? That's so stupid to me. Like, and it's because classes or exams, whatever, are structured like this, it just absolutely kills the joy of learning because you're so focused on like, oh my gosh, like I just need to like memorize this. I need to like just learn this, that you don't actually have the time to think for yourself. And that's the difference. Because when you just take information, you just take someone else's answer, like literally and figuratively in some cases on exams, you don't actually come away with anything from the time you spent spent memorizing. Because true knowledge, true understanding, it's not linear. It's not checking boxes and like, getting credit requirements or, meeting a GPA threshold for an internship. It's so much less organized than that. It's about following your curiosity and asking questions and answering them for yourself so you can apply your own unique perspectives and experiences that you've had to form an understanding. And that's where I feel like, especially as adults, people really struggle, is they don't know how to think for themselves, because throughout college, throughout their entire lives leading up until that point, all they've been told is what to think, not how. Random aside, but a good way to think about how to think is to drop in on like a philosophy lecture or just go look up like a PDF or a YouTube video or something. Like that'll get you started in more ways than going to any sort of BS class you could attend. Environment is definitely a double-edged sword. I know I mentioned that as one of the things I liked about school, but it also goes the other way because college is quite honestly just like an echo chamber. Because again, it's like you just have a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds who don't really have many other experiences apart from being students or whatever, snippets they got from their lives back home. And in that sense, there's not really many conversations about stuff outside of school, right? It's like you have like the typical college experiences of like internships, clubs, extracurriculars, dating and relationship drama. And outside of that, it's like there's not as much to talk about. Like, I mean, maybe it's just like the people that I was around in school, but I genuinely wish there were more conversations about like life. Like, what do you value? Like, what does your ideal life look like? If you only had like a year to live, like how would you spend it? Like, I wish I was having these conversations not only in the classroom, but in like the comfort of, I don't know, like living rooms or whatever. And again, I feel like that all of this just kind of blends and carries over into adulthood because people haven't been having these sort of conversations. They're still not having them when they graduate. And this goes into my next point about what I didn't like about school, but I feel like we treat college as this sort of training ground for adult life. But from what I've personally experienced and seen, that is not the case. I'm not trying to sound like a boomer or whatever, but there's so much stuff in college that you really should have a grasp of when you graduate, but it's not included. It's things like financial literacy, like knowing how to set up a Roth IRA or having a 401k, like how much should you how do you save more effectively? Like things like that. Or also understanding okay, what does it mean to have healthy relationships, to be able to set personal boundaries, to understand what you value in life so that you can apply that to career, to your passions, your relationships, whatever else. Like just understanding how to live life. I feel like that's what college should really be about. But again, because it's structured in a way where it's just a constant sort of plug and chug, like automation machine to just get kids to check off boxes so they can just, again, get that piece of paper degree and just go off into the working world, you don't think about all of these other areas of life that are so much, again, I'm biased, but so much more important than your job, right? Because ultimately, the way that you view the world, the way that you view yourself, the way that you view your relationships, those have such a more profound impact on your long-term well-being and satisfaction in life, because all of those will directly influence the sort of career you take, after college. So, yeah, that was a long, long ramble about college and how to prepare you for adulthood, but huge gripe of mine, yeah. I feel like college is, as you can tell by the way I've been talking, glorified, or at least certain aspects of it. I think it's very much one-sided, at least in the way that I grew up, that college is the time to be tailgating, developing a drinking problem, going through hookup culture and all that stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think, again, it's just part of being human and having those experiences. But when it becomes sort of this unspoken norm or expectation, you start to engage in these sort of behaviors when they may not really resonate with you. And as you can tell, I definitely speak from experience here. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video, if you remember this, where it's when you have expectations and you try to live up to those instead of your own, all you're doing is just continuing to disconnect from yourself and who you really are. And I feel like having graduated almost 2 years ago and having really changed my perspective on life and myself as a person in the past couple years, I realized that a lot of what I did and how I acted in college wasn't fully authentic to how I approach life now. And again, I'm not saying I would change a thing. I wouldn't, because all of those experiences, all of those mishaps or whatever, they were all essential into getting me to where and who I am in life today, to have the necessary sort of context to have realizations or awakenings that I did. But there are definitely ways that I would have approached college differently, and I would have wished someone had talked to me about before I went into it. So that's exactly what I'm going to talk about in the next portion of the video. But I just want to end by saying college is great. It's genuinely, I feel like the best way I can describe it, this opportunity to just have a very human experience in an accessible way, in a condensed time frame and environment or whatever. But it's also an incredibly expensive and perhaps inefficient way at times to do all that. And by no means is it necessary, right? I feel like I speak for a lot of people here where after graduating high school, it feels like college was the only option. There literally was no other option but to just go to college. But that's not the case. And hopefully we can, I don't know, maybe as a society work on that. But until then, all we can really do is try and educate those younger than us. So stay tuned. That's what we're going to talk about.